Hey ladies, welcome back to episode number 4, season number 3 of Finding Joy in Your Home podcast. I am so glad you're joining me today. This is a topic we've never talked about here on the podcast. We're going to be talking about sleep for children, whether you have babies up through 5, 6 years old. This is so helpful. It's going to be a great interview. I'm very, very excited. First, I want to give you a couple of announcements. First things first, if you have not heard, this podcast is now also a video podcast. So you might be watching me already here on YouTube. And if you are not, you are able to do that. If you listen to the audio and that's how you want to do it, great. Nothing's going to change in that way, but we are also now on YouTube. We also have our new baking school with Jami, a new weekly YouTube video where we are learning how to bake together. Every week features a new teaching topic and a new recipe. So head over to bakingschoolwithjami.com. And if you're already on YouTube, you can find it right there I have a whole playlist for it. We are on week 3 and week 4 will be posted later this week. So you can, it's been so fun. We just covered quick breads. And then this Thursday, we're going to be talking about how to make the perfect scone. That one's going to be really fun. Okay. And then my last announcement for you is that if you are feeling like your home is absolutely out of control, if you're needing better routines, if you want to build out a master home management system that is flexible enough but detailed enough to work for your family, I invite you to come join our 14-day home management bootcamp. We're actually getting it kicked off this week, and it's going to be amazing. We're going to be developing these routines, deep cleaning schedules. How do you make this actually work in your home? And you're going to be able to tailor it to your household. You don't have to make it look exactly like mine or even the other ladies. You get to make it so that it works for you and for your family, which is awesome. So if you want to join us, you still can go to findingjoyshop.com to join in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead now and jump into this interview because it's awesome. I have Alex here from Sweet Siestas. She is a pediatric sleep consultant. And what I love is that she's very balanced. She's going to give you a lot of different options. And in fact, we get into some really specific stuff because sleep is so important. And any of us who've ever had children know that sleep can be really difficult. I've had some weird sleep issues with my 3-year-olds this year. And then my 1-year-old has been having issues. You'll get to hear me ask about some of those today. And what I really loved is I was actually asking her some specific questions, which she offers like sleep consulting. And I thought, well, this was just like a mini picture of what you could get. And I'm already ready, like to, as soon as my 1-year-old, because we recorded this a few weeks ago. I took her advice for my almost 1-year-old. And it worked. It worked really well. So I'm already like ready. If my 1-year-old has sleep issues again, I am calling Alex immediately to go through it because she just has really, and I've read books on sleep before, but she has really, really targeted specific stuff to help, which is just so cool. So if you want to check her out, you can go to sweetsiestasllc.com. We will have the links for you in the show notes. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump in. Hey ladies, welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited. We have Alex here from Sweet Siestas, and we're going to be talking about sleep training, but not in a scary way. We're going to be talking about good sleep training, why it's needed. I don't think this is a topic we've ever had on the podcast, but with 7 children, people ask me all the time my tips for sleep training, babies and toddlers, and when it gets really hard. So I'm so excited to have Alex here. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Jami. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so I want to get into the good stuff, but first, tell us about yourself and how you got started as a sleep consultant.
Sure. So I am born and raised in San Antonio. I've got 2 sisters, an identical twin. Me and my husband met and married. We married 7 years ago, and we've got 2 boys ourselves. My oldest his name is Hank, and he's about to be 6. And our youngest, his name is Lane, and he is about 2.5. And then with my 2 sisters, I've got a total of 6 nieces and nephews. Mm-hmm. So we are always together and always hanging out. We love being outside and being with friends and family all the time. I got started as a sleep consultant. Well, so when we first had Hank, almost 6 years ago, he was really great. He was sleeping okay in the beginning, normal waking up every couple hours as a newborn. And then once he hit that 4-month sleep regression, we moved him to his own room. And I started researching sleep training on my own, and we were able to find something that worked for him pretty quickly. Then we had Lane, and Lane, I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, the second child, he was rough. And so when we first brought him home from the hospital, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on with this child. He was so difficult, and right off the bat was having way more sleep struggles than my oldest. And so I started researching more, and we finally found something that worked for him after a while. A few months later, Lane was probably 4 months old when I ran into a family friend of ours, and she started asking how his sleep was going. And I started talking to her about all the different things we were doing. And she was like, you kind of sound like you know what you're talking about. You should look into getting certified. So I did. And a few months later, I started my business and have been helping other families do the same since.
That's awesome, because sleep is such a overwhelming and frustrating and important thing. And it can really feel very overwhelming on
Absolutely.
what am I supposed to do? What do we do in this situation? Something was working and now it's not. So how do you deal with all that? It's so difficult. So let's start right at the very beginning. What age then do you start sleep training?
So you can start sleep training, I would say, as soon as your baby hits the 4-month sleep regression. And the reason is because from 0 to 16 weeks, your baby is sleeping in that 4th trimester sleep. Very either active sleep where they're kind of grunting and moving around a lot, or very deep sleep. Babies are sleeping in 2 stages of sleep. And then once the 4-month sleep regression happens, they move to 4 stages of sleep, just like we as adults sleep. Stage 1 is very light sleep, and stage 4 is very deep sleep. So shifting from that 4th stage of deep sleep back, starting a new cycle into the 1st stage of light sleep is typically when they're waking up. And so a 4-month-old is struggling to figure out how to do it automatically. So what I like to help with is eliminating the sleep props, the feeding to sleep and rocking to sleep, so that babies can learn to do it automatically, just like we do in the middle of the night. You know, we all still wake up in the middle of the night to either get up and go to the restroom or just to get comfortable. But it's a lot easier for us to put ourselves back into that next sleep cycle. And so what we want to do with babies is, once they wake up between sleep cycles, is have them be able to turn over, get comfortable, and fall back into sleep on their own. So 4 months is the earliest you can start sleep training, just because we don't want to start before they've hit that 4-month sleep regression, because it's a biological shift to move from the 2 stages of sleep to 4. And if we train them before they hit that biological shift, you might have to retrain later. So we'll start at 4 months, and I go all the way up to 5 years old.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was just thinking through, my 7th is 10 months old, right? Or no, he's 11 months old now. And in December, he hit the 4-month, and he had actually been sleeping really well. He was starting to stretch longer, and we got a cold in December, and it was like, just terror time, because he got a cold, which I've never had a baby get a cold that young. And so he was stuffy and couldn't sleep. And so all of a sudden our patterns were just like absolutely completely disrupted, because he now was like, I was like sleeping, sitting up, holding him because he couldn't breathe. And our next 4 months were just absolutely wrecked after that, trying to get back to him not needing me to sleep and, kind of going through that whole process again. And it can be such a tough age. And to figure out, to know, what do I do in this situation? What's the right thing? When does he need comfort? When doesn't he? It can be so difficult, especially I think when they're really, really young.
Absolutely. It is really hard moving from that out of the 4th trimester and teaching them to sleep, but then having a sick kid on top of that can really hinder getting started in that sleep training and getting them on a schedule. So
Yeah. And thankfully he's doing much better now because we've been working on it, but it was quite a few months where I felt like, you feel worse too. You get to that point where you're like, I really, really need the sleep now. And I guess that's kind of what leads me into my next question is, a lot of times, I think on social media, we kind of can vilify sleep training, that it is all bad all the time. And yet, I think for babies and for mom and dad, there's some really good benefits that we need to kind of have those discussions too, especially when I talk to moms who are so overwhelmed and so just barely surviving. And sleep training can be really helpful. So, what have you kind of found to be the benefits then of sleep training for parents and for baby? Like, is it just for mom's convenience that we're sleep training? Is it holistically good for the family?
Absolutely. So healthy sleep is great for everyone, right? So babies need sleep to grow just as much as they need nutrients. They're growing and their brains are growing and they're physically growing during their naps and through their bedtime. And for moms, if we're not sleeping well, we're not going to be the best versions of ourselves. So there's lots of things that can impact mom's sleep and dad's.
Yeah.
One being a weakened immune system. If we're not sleeping, our immune system is slower and making us more susceptible for illness, in turn, making it difficult for us to take care of our kids. Physical health as well. If you're not sleeping and you're stressed, then you could lose milk production. You could have, there's lack of sleep has been linked to chronic conditions like diabetes, heart disease, hypertension. It can disrupt hormones responsible for metabolism. So you could potentially gain weight because of lack of sleep. Mental health, obviously, obvious reasons. You could have an impact on your relationships with your spouse, lots of fighting, just because there's so much tension. And then your parenting abilities as well. It's really hard to keep yourself calm in the crazy situations that are happening when you're having kids. For instance, if you have a new baby and you're sleep deprived from the new baby, but you've got a toddler that's needy and crying, you're going to be, your fatigue is going to take over and you're going to be a lot more short, and it's going to be a lot more challenging for you to handle these situations calmly. So yes, there's a lot of health benefits to making sure that you are sleeping well, but then also your child. If your child is going down to sleep overtired, that means cortisol is pumping through. We want to find, my methods are going to be based on when melatonin is naturally secreted from your baby's brain. Finding those peak times to go down for nap and bedtime is crucial, so that they can avoid the cortisol secretion. So if your baby is going down overtired, cortisol begins to secrete and continues to secrete throughout the night, making it harder to fall asleep at bedtime and naps, making them susceptible to waking up in the middle of the night and early risings and shorter naps. So all around, making sure everyone is sleeping well is.
Yeah. So let me ask you then. So let me give you a little case study. So my 11-month-old, he's been sleeping really well. He's been sleeping about 7 to 7. And yet in the last month or so, he's been going down at 7 and then sleeping for about 2 hours and waking up like he just had a nap. And so then he's like, I'm up. And it's like, no, it's bedtime. So I'm assuming we've got some issues with our nap schedule going on, but I'm kind of like, I'm not like, do you need it earlier in the day? I don't know. Do you have any advice for me there?
So there's a few things that might be going on. You said he's 11 months. When does he turn 1 year?
August 12th.
Okay. So we're creeping on a year old.
Yeah.
This is big time for the 12-month sleep regression.
Okay.
How many naps is he taking?
He's typically taking 2.
Okay. 2 naps for a 12-month-old is great. A lot of parents think that this 12-month sleep regression is when they're ready to drop one of their naps and go to 1 nap a day.
I've been tempted.
The case. Yeah, not the case. Hold strong with 2 naps. He still needs. I would consider dropping the nap anywhere between 14 and 18 months.
Okay.
So if he's taking 2 naps a day and going down at 7 and having what's called a false start, where he's waking up after just like a little nap for bedtime, I would consider making bedtime a little bit earlier. So a false start is typically when they are overtired.
Okay.
So I might do bedtime at maybe 6:45 instead of 7. And then make sure his naps are strong. If he's not having to at least 1 hour for each nap, then I would go even earlier to make up for that lost sleep from the day. Because like I said a minute ago, if he's going down overtired, he's already got cortisol pumping through, making it harder to fall asleep and stay asleep.
That makes sense.
If he goes down for naps and bedtime when melatonin is being secreted naturally, then it continues to secrete throughout the night, making it easier to fall asleep and stay asleep.
That makes sense.
Potentially going through the 12-month sleep regression, potentially going down overtired. And the 12-month sleep regression is a rough one.
Yeah.
Is he trying to walk?
Yes. And he's got teeth popping through.
Oh, yeah.
So
the 12-month sleep regression is mainly due to the physical milestone of either cruising or walking.
Yeah, he's trying.
And then a lot of new words and understanding what you're saying and trying to comprehend everything. So the 12-month one is a rough one. It really messes with nap number 2 and waking during the night. Definitely work as much as possible with his walking, because as soon as he's through with mastering the physical milestone of walking, or any milestone, if you've got a baby going through the 8-month regression where they're learning to sit up or crawl or pull up, and then the 12-month regression of walking, if you ever have a physical milestone, work on those as much as possible during the day so that they're not tempted to work on them at night when no one's there, they have no distractions. And their brains are working overtime to try and master these things, the physical milestones and the cognitive milestones of new words and stuff. And so it's pushing so much energy through their body to learn these things that they are staying awake at night or waking up at night. So work on those milestones as much as possible during the day. So
that's all super helpful, because I always think of, with sleep, I'm always looking at sleep kind of holistically with their nap schedule. You got to keep all that into account, but the whole part of their developing brains and all the other things that their brains are doing, it's so helpful to see that. And with my son, my temptation, he has been getting really tired before bed. And I've like been waiting to put him down because I'm like, no, that's going to make the problem worse. If I put him down earlier, he's just going to wake up at 8:30 awake. So those are very helpful things that I hadn't thought through for that. So what he's been doing is taking like a very short nap earlier in the morning for like half an hour, and then doing like a longer afternoon nap. So it sounds like maybe I need to encourage those naps to be like a bit more even.
Yeah, I would definitely say the first nap needs to be a little bit longer than 30 minutes, hopefully at least an hour.
Okay.
If he could get to 2 hours, that's great. And we want to cap his naps at 2 hours.
Okay.
You don't want him to think that daytime sleep is the longer stretches and nighttime sleep is the shorter stretches. So shoot for anywhere between 1 and 2 hours for nap 1 and 1 and 2 hours for nap 2.
Okay. I love that. Thank you. You just helped me a ton with that. So I've got some new ideas now to try for him. Okay. So now that we're past Jami counsel time, I wanted to go back to one thing. You talked about that there's other methods other than just like the aggressive cry it out. And you did talk about that. You talked about like melatonin. So is that what you're really basing your methods on, is looking at the whole child, all of these things going on? Because when we hear sleep training, so many of us just think letting your baby scream for 6 hours and not comforting him. And we're like, no, we don't want that. So you've already shared, but how does your method differ from that? Like, I guess looking at the whole child.
Okay. So no parent really wants to do cry it out. And I have had very few clients that have actually recommended it. It's not a method that I will right off the bat suggest unless a parent is okay with a more aggressive method, which I've actually never really started out with that. I do have more gentle approaches. Coinciding with a schedule that's age appropriate and making sure the naps are longer and making sure bedtime is on time, those are going to be one of the big factors of sleep training. There's two factors when it comes to really focusing on sleep training. And one, like I said, is timing. And two is consistency of the schedule and the training method that we choose. So if you do choose to work with me, we'll sit on the phone for an hour and kind of learn about your child and the schedule that your child needs to be on, your child's personality, your personality as a parent, and your husband's, because I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with whatever we do choose. I'll ask your cry tolerance and we'll find a method that works for y'all. And I have a few for kids in a crib, and I have a couple for kids in a bed. And we can kind of morph them to be more customized to you and your family.
Yeah.
If you have like a middle of the road cry tolerance, I might pick one method and pick pieces out from another method to make it customized for you and your family. But yeah, I have more gentle approaches, and I'll start with telling you about the gentler ones, and then we'll talk about the more aggressive ones during our call. And then you and your husband would decide together what works for y'all.
Yeah. And that's so helpful because there's a big difference between a 4-month-old and a 4-year-old when it comes to how we're training. And my 3-year-old right now, he is going through a very stubborn phase. So we have times where like sleep, there is some screaming involved because he doesn't want to go to bed, and there's just
like every toddler.
Yes. So many differences there. And that's very different than my 11-month-old who's trying to go to sleep. Like there's just so many things. So actually that's my last question before I ask you some more about the consulting, is what about toddlers? What do we do? What are some starting points with sleep training toddlers? Because they can be very
toddlers, obviously a different breed. Toddlers are crazy. Toddlers are stubborn, and they will push boundaries. So just like babies, with the two most important factors being timing and consistency, toddlers have a new factor to include, which is communication. I will teach you all sorts of different communication techniques, reward systems. All of these are really, really helpful when it comes to training a toddler. And it's going to be different because they have kind of free range of their room and the house once bedtime happens. They have the ability now, without the bars, to get out of bed and then to leave the room, which makes the training methods different.
Yeah.
To help them want to stay in their bed.
Yeah.
But yes, I work with kids all the way up to 5 years old. And a lot of the kids are in their bed or in their mom and dad's bed, or sleeping on their mom and dad's floor, or the parents are sleeping in the children's bed. And I've worked with so many parents to fix these issues as soon as the parents are ready. And I have a lot of clients that say, don't judge us, but they're sleeping in our bed. I have zero judgment.
Yeah.
If that is what is working for you, great. But as soon as you're ready, you call me and I'll help you get out of it. And I also have had a lot of clients tell me, I haven't slept in the same bed with my husband in years, and we're so ready to get back to our own beds. And have that time back together as husband and wife, either, just decompressing after a long day, or having that time together as husband and wife, without a child in your bed.
Yeah. And that's
what I'm saying.
Yes. And that's a struggle for everybody who's got little kids.
Absolutely.
That's something that I say a lot because I am a very big fan of sleep training, age appropriately. Everybody gets up in arms about sleep training. I'm a big fan of that. And I feel like it's the only way I've survived 2 sets of twins, having all these young kids. But what I always say is, because then people get like, well, but I like to nurse my baby to sleep at bed at night. That's great. If that is working well for you, awesome. Then don't change anything. That's wonderful. But for the people who are struggling and feel like if I don't get a good night's sleep soon, I'm going to die, then there are some really good tools and resources. And so I always encourage people, like, if you're at that point where you feel like you need to change some things, there's some really good tools for doing that. And it doesn't have to feel, so hard. And I think sometimes people feel afraid to ask for sleep training resources because there can be a very negative reaction online sometimes with certain people.
And there is, because a lot of people think that it might come across as neglect.
Yes.
That you're not helping your child with their needs and they're crying for a reason. Yes, they are crying for a reason. They're crying to communicate they're communicating something. Yeah. I also always tell my clients that you put your baby down loved, fed, healthy, they're warm, and they're okay.
Yeah.
Yes, they're crying and yes, they're communicating to you, but also we want to teach our children, just like teaching them to ride a bike or learn to walk. This is something that is a lifelong skill.
Yeah.
Yes, they will grow out of it eventually and learn to sleep on their own. But also, if you are struggling as a parent and this is your time to focus on sleep training, this is a good time to help teach them that skill whenever you're ready.
Yeah. And I think it can be a very loving thing to do. You're helping them. If you've seen an overtired baby all day who's just falling apart all day, give him some tools to sleep better. And that's going to make him feel better. And like you said, for his immune system, for all of that stuff, I'm just a very big fan of when you get to the point where you need it, that the sleep training can be absolutely life-changing. Like when you're not sleeping and it's horrible, like sleep is life-changing. So
absolutely.
My last question is, we kind of like, not last question, but as we wrap this up. So how do you know when you get to the point with a child where you're like, I need some help? How do you know if you need a sleep consultant to help your child sleep?
Well, kind of just like we talked about, if you are ready to stop the co-sleeping or stop the bedtime battles, stuff like that. But also if your child is taking forever to fall asleep. I've had clients come to me saying bedtime takes us 2 or 3 hours. If your child is waking multiple times in the night, yes, it's developmentally appropriate for a baby to wake up to be fed a few times a night. But if it's gotten to the point where they're needing to be fed to get back to sleep, for instance, my son Lane, when he was first born, I guess not first born, when we first started sleep training him around 6-8 months, he was still waking up. He wanted to nurse every 30 minutes before I started the training process.
Yeah.
He does not need to eat every 30 minutes. Yeah. And so if your child is, like I said, struggling to fall asleep at night, waking multiple times in the night and needing assistance like breastfeeding or bottle to get back to sleep, or waking super early in the morning, I'm talking anything before 6:30. We want to focus on getting them to sleep longer. Or if your child is struggling with taking naps or taking long naps, you can absolutely consider sleep training. And my consults, I do free 15-minute phone consultations. So if you're unsure if this is something that's right for you, reach out. We can set up a free consult, and if it's not right for you, then no big deal. And if it is right for you, we'll discuss different options.
Yeah, that's helpful, because I think a lot of times we think that, oh, well, this is just kind of in the realm of normal, like no 6-month-old sleeps, or yeah, they're just not sleeping. Like and then we talk to other moms and a lot of us are struggling. And so it just becomes this like, what are you going to do? And so it's helpful to hear, if it's taking 2 to 3 hours to go to sleep, there's some things we can do. Like it's helpful to hear that and know, okay, there's some resources we can reach out to. So how do your sleep packages work then? What does that look like if someone's going to work with you?
So like I said, I have the free 15-minute consult. So you can go on my website and there's a button to say sign up for the phone consult, or the contact me tab is the same thing. So we would set up a phone consultation, discuss the sleep issues that you're having, and I'll tell you a little bit about my programs. And then after that, you would choose whichever program works best for you. On my website, I've got 3 different sleep packages: a small, medium, and large. And honestly, they're all kind of the same. They all have the same bulk to them. You've got a 1-hour training call, which we discussed earlier. In that 1-hour call, I'll set it up with you and your husband if your husband wants to be there. Most of the time, I just have the wife. Sometimes husband comes too. And we discuss room environment, nap and bedtime schedules and routines, and then all the different training methods. And then that's when you would choose which one is right for you. After that, we have unlimited texting support for however many days you choose. The 3 different sleep packages, that's the difference. And then at the very end, I will send a PDF with all information that you'll need to get your child from 4 months to 4 years. So you'll get all the information on every regression, all the information on every nap transition, moving from 3 to 2 naps, 2 to 1 nap, 1 to 0 naps, and then all the information on moving from a crib to a bed comes in the PDF. Now, the only difference between the 3 sleep packages, like I said, are the days of texting support. So I have 3 days, 7 days, or 14 days. Typically, a baby in a crib takes about 3 to 5 days to show progress. So I normally say the week package is best because you'll start to see progress in 3 to 5 days, but there's still going to be hiccups that you'll want some accountability buddy, me, to work with. And then training a toddler in a big bed takes about 7 to 10 nights. So I recommend at least the week, if not the 2 weeks. The 3 days is more for me to help you get started and then you to kind of go off on your own with what you've learned. But yeah, those are my 3 different packages. I've also got under my additional services tab, I've got adding on days. If you want to add 3 extra days, or if you want to add 7 extra days, then I've got like a 45-minute phone call that you can, like, for instance, for your 11-month-old, asking about, is it time to drop to 1 nap? We're struggling with false starts, but he normally sleeps really good. So that's a great opportunity for a 45-minute phone call, not a full sleep package, where we could discuss how to move through this transition or this regression. And then I also have a couple Zoom training seminars that I've recorded and made slides for. So you can purchase those and I'll send those out. You can have the full recording of me and however many other moms were part of that, and then all the slides so you can implement it by yourself.
Oh, that's really helpful. Yes. Well, I love that because I think everybody on the call today got to see a little tiny piece of it when I was asking all my questions for my 12-month-old. And that's so helpful because now I've got tools in hand that I can start working with him. And I wasn't even fully realizing that you always hear about the 4-month sleep regression, but I wasn't thinking of the 12-month as such a big deal. And so you can kind of feel like, oh, well, he's just being funny right now. But it's also kind of validating to know, like, no, this is just a hard time. We're going to help work him through it. And we've got some tools now to kind of help with that.
Good.
Well, thank you so much. So let everybody know where they can find you, your website, all that. We'll make sure to put it all in the show notes so people can hop on over there.
Perfect. So my website is sweetsiestasllc.com. And that's SWEETSIESTALLC.com. Did I spell that right?
I think so. Looks like it.
And then my Instagram is a really great tool. I've got lots of tips and tricks, lots of posts, all absolutely free, obviously. And then a lot of reels. Check out my highlight bubbles. I've got all the information on regressions, snap transitions on there as well. And that's at sweet_siestas.
Okay, I'm going to write that down and we will. Now I'm spelling it wrong. I'll make sure that we've got it right. And we'll put that in the show notes too, because yes, that is super helpful.
Spelling it out loud. I haven't spelled it out loud in so long. Okay, my website, sweet, SWEETSIESTAS LLC.
There we go. Yes. Okay. Yes, you missed the S. There we go. Okay, we've got that. We'll just put a clickable link and people can go to it. That's perfect.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Alex, thank you so much for taking the time today. This was super helpful and encouraging, I know, for so many listeners, but also for me personally, because now I'm excited to work on some things. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, ladies. Well, I hope you had a wonderful time with Alex and I chatting. I loved getting to ask her some really specific questions, which, like I said in the intro, this was several weeks ago or a month ago that we did this interview. And my baby is now 1, and I have put this stuff into practice, and he's sleeping really well. There's a few things that had not dawned on me to actually put him to bed earlier. And so it was really, really helpful getting that specific advice. So hopefully today's episode gave you some great ideas, was helping you think. But after going through that interview with Alex, I'm like, oh, a sleep consultancy with her would be amazing. So you can go check out all the resources and everything she has by going to sweetsiestasllc.com. I will have the link in the show notes for you. But I just had a great time getting to interview her. Well, I get asked all the time about sleep with children. I mean, I have 7 children, and we've gone through a lot of sleep things over the years. So anyway, hopefully you guys had a great time, and we'll see you guys back here next week for the next episode.